Hey, everybody, Tim Higgins here. I'm here with my good friend Jeremy, and I would introduce him, but I'm going to say he's a great musician, great singer, plays out a lot. When you think about music, I'm going to say he's kind of born and brought up into it, which I just found out he plays one of my favorite instruments of all time, the sax.
Hmm.
So it's hard to play the blues or the jazz without thinking about a good saxophone player.
Hmm.
So, Jeremy, I'll let you introduce yourself because you can do it better.
Excellent. Thanks, Tim. Since the third grade, I picked up the sax and quickly moved into jazz. Luckily, I have a heritage on my mother's side of musicians. My grandmother played the organ and the piano. My grandfather was a very well-known singer in Baltimore,
Wow.
um, tenor. And my grandmother's brother was a jazz saxophonist. He even had, I just discovered recently, even had in the 1930s an hour segment on Saturday nights on an AM radio station in
Wow.
Baltimore where he
That's
played.
cool.
I'm assuming he played with a group
Yeah.
of jazz musicians. But yeah, long-standing musical family. And I picked up the sax because he picked up the sax, my grandmother's brother, and
Yeah.
thought I'd continue that tradition and immediately fell in love with it, especially because being a Leo, I love being in the spotlight. So every jazz musician knows that the saxophone gets most of the solos
Yep.
in any jazz band. So I, of course, enjoyed that as well.
That's true.
Um, I got many awards at graduation, high school graduation, for my musical abilities. I'm happy to say my daughter, who is an opera singer, got the same traditional outstanding musical awards at her high school graduation, but for voice.
Wow, that's cool.
Um, and then when I was about 18, I I didn't think the spotlight could give me enough shine in jazz that my 18-year-old obnoxious mind wanted. So I picked up the guitar, um, knowing every guitarist is absolutely cool. Uh, Not that jazz musicians aren't, but a different kind of cool.
Oh, you got
And
Miss Montgomery. You got a couple out there.
yeah, yeah. And being from Baltimore, I would have to travel to DC a lot in order to be
Oh
playing
yeah.
jazz. So picked up guitar when I was around 17, 18, joined some typical late 80s bands that were covering U2 and REM,
There you go.
even little Guns N' Roses. Always been a rhythm singer, or excuse
Yeah.
me, a backup singer and a rhythm guitarist. I taught myself guitar by ear, which we'll get into. And unfortunately, I didn't study privately like I did on the jazz saxophone with music theory and all that, but I studied by ear on the guitar.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I've been playing in bars and singing for the last 25 years in any Baltimore dive bar that'll have me.
That's awesome.
Still, honestly, covering that kind of alternative genre of REM and Pumpkins and
Yeah.
um,
Incubus and that kind of yeah.
yeah, all of that. That usually works on acoustic. I do acoustic solo as well as an acoustic duo with a friend of mine.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, man, there's no better high than to be on stage, I'll tell you.
Exactly.
There really isn't.
Oh, I agree, man. Yeah, I kind of grew up in the '80s area, so I took music lessons, and this is about you, but I grew up playing,
Hmm.
and so I don't know if you knew, I grew right outside of Athens, which is home of
Okay.
REM and
Yeah, of course.
B-52s and all
Yeah.
that. So I
Mhm.
grew up playing in Athens. We played in a little place called Helen. I used to joke with my kids every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday was that's what paid for my gas was we played out. Right.
Nice. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so we were the house band for a place in
Hmm.
Helen and a place called Hayloft. It was great, man. It was a good time. Now the bad
Yeah.
news is I spent all my time on guitar, so I never could sing. So
Yeah.
there was a few times when I was playing and I would forget that I'm singing, and then we'd go through a complete verse and I'd be like, oh yeah, that's me.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I to drive this, the cool thing is you're very techy, right? So you're a techie guy. You work for a technical company, and the one thing that a lot of people don't know is how technology has driven the arts, right? I want to say music, but everything, right? You look at streaming, you look at recording. I mean, I'm pretty sure you've got like a little studio you play with in your own home. Most good musicians or even bad musicians do now. Um,
Hmm.
and we were just talking, so I'm going to jump on this topic because this really does bug me too.
Hmm.
So I did grow up where I needed to know how things worked. I had to learn music theory. I had to learn, how to read music, how to, so I took lessons. Unfortunately, I grew up in a small town, so we didn't have a jazz band at that time, but I'd hang out with
Mhm.
the people in the music room, and we would do covers and cool stuff like that. Um, so I started learning music theory, but one of my problems today is when you listen, it's too easy to get out there with YouTube. That's good and bad because you have kids who don't learn music. They just learn to master a song and they'll put it on YouTube, right?
Mhm.
But then when you try to jam with them out in public, they can't. A lot of that is because they don't have feeling, they don't have rhythm, they don't have
You
the
don't
things
have
that
an ear.
exactly. They
Yeah.
don't have the
To
things that
hear
make it
what's coming
music.
next or understand transitions and what notes work where. Yep.
Exactly. So, and it's actually, I don't know if you listen, but John Petrucci is one of my favorite guys. And he made the comment that you don't need music theory to be a musician, but it does make you learn faster and it makes you fall in better. So, which I
Hmm.
like that theory. So, for an example, if you and I were jamming, you can say, hey, I'm playing this in the key of E, I'm standing there tuning, tempo, whatever. And we speak the language. It's like, oh, I
Hmm.
got you. We got
Hmm.
this. So tell me about that side, about the difference of learning theory, learning music, and just winging it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, like we said, I can be a grumpy old Scrooge when it comes to talking about what the definition of a musician is. And it's only because of how I grew up. And I do recognize that if we don't continue to innovate, then we'll be stuck in whatever we're stuck in forever.
yeah,
It could be any field, anything. So, music had to innovate too. So, yeah, listen, when I grew up, you weren't called a musician unless you studied extensively on your instrument, whatever that instrument is, your
exactly.
voice, your guitar, your sax, private lessons, music theory, building your ear to understand and to be able to hear a G chord or a G note and pick it out as a G and understand a simple transition of what are the notes that complement a G major scale and triads and sevenths and inversions and all that helps you, like you just said, be able to, say to me, hey, I'm going to jam in the key of C. And I'm going to be
Right.
like, all right, well, I know there's no flats or sharps in the key of C, and I can easily move from C to the third of that
Yeah.
scale, which would be E, and then to the fifth of that scale, which would be G, and have fun playing in that. So you immediately understand the uh, the musical boundaries that you're in,
Exactly.
and to be able to creatively manipulate those boundaries to always please the ear of not only you but the musicians you're playing with and then anyone
Yeah.
who's listening. um, and that's what I did, learning jazz and the sax. And I loved all my music theory classes. They came so easy to me. But unfortunately, when I picked up the guitar in my late teens, being a late teenager and stupid, I wanted to learn it as quickly as possible and not put in the effort that I just
Yeah. Yeah.
did on jazz. And
Learn a few chords and get on stage, right?
exactly. But I will say this now, the extensive training I had being a jazz musician did build an ear. So when you and I in the late 80s had our boombox and we're hitting rewind and play, rewind and
Yep.
play, rewind and play on a certain section of a guitar song, um, luckily we have an ear to be able to not hit rewind and play 1,000 times. We only need to hit it a couple
Right.
times
Right.
before we can hear what they're playing and we understand where it is in transition on the instrument that we have in our hands.
Yes.
Um, but if I really wish I would have studied or applied my theory to the guitar, because tablatures,
Yep.
and for any musician out there, especially guitarists, tablatures were a godsend as well as a double-edged sword. So you want
Hmm.
to learn how to play the song as quickly as possible, and you know what fret numbers mean and what strings 1 through 6 are and where to put your fingers. I can teach you Stairway to Heaven in 10 minutes.
Right.
But can you apply that to any other song? No,
Yep.
you can't, because you only know where to put your fingers for that specific song.
Exactly.
It's more, I guess, less muscle memory with your ear and more physical memory with your fingers on the fretboard.
Right. Yeah, the good and bad and the ugly, like you're saying about tabs, I'll never forget because I'm a huge Eddie Van Halen fan, right?
Uh-huh.
And I trying to figure out, ain't talking about love took decades because I never knew at that time as a teenager that they were tuned down a half step, right? So I'm listening to the song and I'm like, why are they playing A minor up here? It doesn't make sense, right? So, but yeah, the tab helps, but to me, it's also kind of like what you're saying. It's just a foundation to help you fill in those gaps to me,
Yeah.
right? So like, oh, it is half step, okay, or it's a drop D, or if you're playing Slipknot, you're way down to drop C, right?
Yeah.
And so those things are kind of helpful. But again, I agree that I was talking to a guy the other day who actually played with Dwizzle Zappa,
Oh,
and
nice.
yeah, and the
That's
cool thing
cool.
about him is he's got a we were talking about your pedal board. We're gonna talk about that in a few minutes, but he has a note on his pedal board that just says listen. And so in other words, don't be tinkering, don't be playing, just listen, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's one thing that kids today forget because I teach, we talked about that, but I used to teach some, but it's just beginning basic stuff, right? And the one thing I always tell a kid is just put on some good earphones, sit back and just listen, visualize what they're doing. And it got so bad the way I grew up is I don't even like listening to singers anymore. No offense to singers, but if I'm learning a song as a guitar player, I try to find it without the singer so I can hear what the
Yeah.
guitar player's doing, right?
Yeah. It's funny you say that because my wife will say, God, are you listening to the words that this guy's singing in the song? And I'm like, he's singing?
Yeah.
All I hear is a guitar riff, and I'm dying to learn whatever that riff is, or I'm trying to understand the chord progression. But I,
Yeah.
I understood he was singing, but I have no idea what he's talking about,
Yeah,
nor do I care.
so exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny. Actually, the same friend of mine showed me that you can now do the karaoke version on your phone, so it takes out the singer. Like, no
Oh,
offense,
wow.
I love Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen was one of the best guitar players that came to rock, with the worst singers on the planet. Right? Dave Lee Roth, not a good
Yeah.
singer. These guys, not talk bad because this is more public. I don't want to get in trouble, but
Mm-hmm.
to the point is, I did read a book a while back, and this is something I really hound on people learning music. Is that musicians have this ability to direct their listening. So if you're listening to something, now this isn't talking about me hearing my wife talk. If you're listening to something, you can actually zone out everything else to hear that. Like if you're listening to, you know, Charlie Parker, right? Talk about jazz. So you can zone everything out and just listen to him play, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
I do that a lot because I wish I was a drummer. I love the idea of being able to take out all your frustrations and do something creative. But if I'm drumming in the car on my knee with my, left and right hand, I can pick out like the bass drum kit, or how many, if he has a double foot pedal on that bass drum, or
yeah,
obviously the difference between this tom and that tom and the snare, to understand that rhythmic pattern that makes up the percussion of that song. You develop that ear again,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think it's important when you talk about muscle memory, right? That goes for sports and everything. It does help to practice your arpeggios and your scales and all that, but it also helps to visualize how people are also, to go completely basic, Eric Clapton, right? You can visualize what he's doing on the guitar. And then it kind of helps you mimic it when you go back. And that's kind of the way I did in the 80s, because you couldn't, to your point, we didn't have internet. Well, we did, but it wasn't this good, right? And the tabs you have didn't exist, or they came in a Guitar magazine, right? If you were lucky.
Yeah, that's right. That's so funny. That's awesome. Like in the Rite Aid when I was 14, pulling out a Guitar magazine. And then you look at it and you're like, there's no way I can play this song. Oh
Yeah.
my God, this is insane. There's like 50 pages to this sheet music.
And they always put the hardest songs in the book. It's like,
I know.
you want me to learn that?
That's so funny.
So, well,
And you
cool.
take it measure by measure. I mean, that's how we had to do it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Now, I
exactly.
will say, and I'm sure we're going to get into this, but the innovation around music obviously had to happen. Everything needs to innovate. People may hate me out there. I'm trying to say this as not an old fogey around music, but with technology today, anyone can make music.
Yes.
But I do believe that a musician is able to make music, but also study the technique of how to make really good music and be a musician by applying what is still, hundreds of years of music theory.
Yeah.
Listen, I have an opera singer as a daughter who just graduated from Ithaca College, one of the best music schools in the Northeast.
Wow.
And they're still teaching theory 1 through 4, just like I had to learn theory 1 through 4 in college.
Yeah.
Because while anyone can make music, in order to be a good musician, you have to be comfortable with making any music, and understanding chord progressions. Like if I downloaded Stairway to Heaven in a tab, and I just picked up the guitar, yeah, I could understand where to put every single finger for every single note that makes up every single chord.
Yeah.
But I can't apply that to any other song.
Right.
And when you learn the fundamentals of theory and music and blend technology with the history of music, you're able to move from one song to another very easily by just understanding the fundamentals of what make up that song. And the rest
Exactly.
comes from your muscle memory and theory memory and your ear.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. So let me ask you this: growing up in that whole '80s kind of, how did actually playing and practicing change? Like, for an example, I have a little studio here. I've got everything completely digital, but I still love the analog world of the analog pedals, the analog mixers, right? The delays. How did you, like, you have to change back in the day? I don't know if you did this, but for an example, I say this a lot as a band, would go to the studio and try to be rich and famous on nothing, right? And the equipment was bigger than my desk, purely analog. You had to have a doctor's degree just know what this switch does, right? But now I can do even a better recording just sitting here with my GT 1000 and whatever pedals I got laying around. And I don't even own an amp anymore. So I know she got the Fender back there, but I don't play.
Yeah, I've seen some of the new monitors that literally are the best amps you can buy now.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I'll go from my GT 1000 directly into the PA or directly into whatever they're doing at the time. And it actually, I'm okay. I'm going to hate myself for saying this because I'm an old guy. I believe in hot tubes. Nothing sounds better than a Marshall when it's heating up. But again, there's a place and time for it, because if you can't, I had a Marshall full stack and I never could play it because it was too loud. Right. So we'd go to the clubs and like, yeah, you can't have that in here. I'm like, listen,
you're going to blow out the windows.
So it's like, fine, whatever. So, but whenever you do your practicing now, or you're learning something new, think the technology wise, do you plug into a, record on a Mac? How's that changed versus the magazine we used to do as kids, right?
Yeah. So I think I use a combination of tech and my ear. So I'll first use my ear. So if I hear a song, I have music playing all day, all night in this house. If I hear a song that I dig, obviously, like most guitarists, you try to find the root note of every chord and work from there. And if it's getting a little complicated, or I don't have enough patience, I'll go look at the tab.
Yeah.
To fill in the blanks, or to find alternative ways to play something. So, like, for example, when you combine tech and the internet and music, especially studying music privately and theory and all that, just because this tab says you need to play a G in this formation, doesn't mean that's the only way you can play a G, especially if you have to move to a minor chord or up 6 frets on the guitar neck. Exactly. You want to be as close as possible to that transition to the next chord, and that requires understanding that a G major chord can be played, 5 different ways in order, and sometimes they sound even better.
Yeah, exactly. GDB is all over the neck, right?
Exactly. And then, after I've learned a chord, I'll send it to a buddy of mine that I play with as an acoustic duo a lot. And I'll just use my iPhone and record it. And what I'll do is concentrate on showing him what my left hand is doing on the neck versus anything else. So he has an idea where I'm going to be. But that means that he'll then capo or find a different complementary key to play in. Yeah.
Play a different octave or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this, you know, I'm 52 years old. I've been in music for the last 45 years.
Nice.
And I've I was born with lead singer syndrome, so I always wanted to be the lead singer, even though I didn't find my voice until my, you know, mid 20s, early 20s.
Right.
So I always let my buddy or other people that I'm with handle the recording side of it.
Yeah.
But I will say, you know, I struggle with understanding the long-term positive benefits of things like autotune
Yes.
and other tech out there that I don't even know of, nor, you know, blatantly selfish, don't care to learn about because I think it steals everything that music theory and learning an instrument is based on. But it's also because I don't have a clear understanding of what that tech really does, and it scares me. So I'm very open, or I want to remain open to understanding it and understanding the applications of it in certain situations. You know, I saw some video recently, a rap star was playing live, and for some reason the auto tune stopped in the middle of his singing.
Wow.
And you clearly heard how out of tune he was.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
kind of looked at the soundboard guy like, what the hell? Um, no one ever wants to be in that situation where they are, you know, exposed like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Millions of
anyway,
times, right?
yeah, so I have a love-hate relationship with tech and music. But I do believe, like I said, everything needs to innovate and move forward. And you know, tech is the way to go. I can't even imagine what music is going to sound like or look like in 20 years,
Yeah.
and what we call musicians then,
Exactly.
you
So
know.
it's funny you said that about the about the singing and so I always told, especially when I was growing up, that if you really want to hear how good a musician is, take all the electronics away. Give them acoustic guitar, set them on your couch, and see what they sound like.
There you go.
And that's if you. I used to love the was the VH1 Unplugged or whatever they did.
Hmm.
You know, they did the Eric Clapton, and
Oh, yeah.
you know they did it forever.
Well, as a musician, I don't think there's any better joy than to do what you just did because it's only
Yeah,
you producing this sound. And how proud can you be to know that all of this creativity is coming just out of you and nothing else? No tech, no
exactly.
laptop. It's a such a fulfilling feeling to be able to create that way solely on your own.
Yeah. So
And
it's
I
fun.
believe it's what every musician should strive for in their personal relationship with their musicianship is what can I do in music that is solely mine, that I own solely, and I create only by myself, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I think so. At the end of the day, it makes you again. It kind of circles back. It makes you a better musician because if you're playing, I'm spending more time listening to you and how do I fill in to make you sound better,
Hmm.
and it makes the whole song sound, as a guitarist, right?
Hmm.
So as the whole song. So if I'm writing a lead or something like that, it's not about me getting up there and the rain in my hair blowing in the wind, you know, what little hair I have left, right? So it's
Yep,
more
like you're
about
in a White Snake video.
exactly.
Awesome.
It's more about, you know, okay, so Jeremy's up there playing and I want to emphasize what you're playing. So I
Yeah,
may
yeah,
just maybe just hit a harmonic or just hit a note. But it goes back to that simplicity of just, okay, how do we make the music sound better just by listening?
yeah,
So
yeah.
and I
Well, you bring up a good point, and again, I've learned a lot from my opera singer daughter because, and she's a choir teacher now after graduation up
oh,
in
that's cool.
Ithaca, New York.
Yeah.
But you know, I learned something amazing when it comes to choirs is that if you if I'm in the audience and my daughter is performing with her choir at the time, if I could pick her voice out,
Yeah.
that's not good.
Yeah, it's true.
And she would tell me, if you can hear me, that's not good because the goal of a choir is to blend, so you only hear uh, one one blended voice, you know,
Yeah,
or you know, one colorful voice. And I
exactly.
struggled with that because, you know,
What's your kid? You want
most of the time studying jazz or being a tenor sax soloist, it's all about how you stand out
yeah,
from
yeah,
the rest of the
exactly.
musicians. So I like what you said about complimenting other musicians in the group with
Right.
nothing that is trying to outstage them. But maybe a different variation of a chord or a harmonic or a capo
Exactly.
would just broaden the overall sound of the entire group instead of pushing you out in front.
Exactly. Yeah. And especially as a guitarist, we always have a hard problem, kind of like the sax. We
Hmm.
want to be up front, right?
Hmm.
Stand a solo. I want to stand in front of a singer. I want you to
Yeah.
hold me up while I'm playing it,
Uh, yeah.
but you learn out through the years, people don't come to see me. They come to see the band, right?
Hmm.
So, and that's, so you want to focus on the music. One of the things that, I think it was Fleetwood Mac, but anyway, one of the singers made a comment about it's about, you spend hours to get that sound perfect.
Hmm.
Um, so, and it kind of goes back to when you think about technology and the way it's growing, the way it's moving, it's amazing that, what do you live again? You're in Boston, right?
I'm in Baltimore.
Baltimore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm in Nashville and we're
Hmm.
having this conversation. The sad thing is I could pick up a guitar and we could actually make music.
Yeah.
That's where
Hmm.
technology is, right?
Hmm.
That's my son's guitar, by the way.
Nice.
So, well, it's a Squire, and that's neither here nor there. I got to help him tune it and clean it later. So,
Hmm.
but it kind of goes to that. Like, we grew up in music, you see the keyboards and the drums, and there's a trumpet over there that I can't play, but my son can play. But the point is,
Hmm.
we could jam right now, and that's where
Hmm.
technology is. Now,
Hmm.
in reality, there may be a slight delay because of Wi-Fi, and this goes to a good question. I'm leading to a question, so I know I'm digressing to get there.
Hmm.
But you play out a lot, and some venues now are slowly beginning to move to Wi-Fi. Now, to play out, I have two acoustics. One was my dad's, and one that I've had for like 30, 40 years. Um, but if I'm playing out, I've got to bring my mixing board. I've got to worry about my monitors. I've got to worry about my earpiece. It's not just me on stage playing guitar anymore,
Hmm.
right? So it's about the playing. So when you play out, how well do you trust the technology? Do you use the technology? And what would you do differently if you had control?
That's funny. I'm looking at my line 6 new Wi-Fi capable
Exactly.
amplification system, and I got rid of my cables recently, my guitar cables, and um listen, that technology's been around for a while, and I just got it last year. So I think that tells you my trust level is kind of low. But you see the sunset every day, you expect the sunset to,
Yeah.
set every day. You use cables all the time that are insulated and wrapped well, and you and I know
Exactly.
that cable folding mechanism that just is like you can do it blind to have a nice, rolling up your cables.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I enjoy it. It gives me more freedom on stage. I'm tired of after every song untangling my guitar cable because I moved around too much and it's all twisted. But there is a part of me that, listen, if it's not charged,
Yeah.
I'm screwed.
You're dead. Yeah.
Uh, and I have an inner ear monitor as well that works off of a piece of equipment that is Wi-Fi
Yep.
as well, and Bluetooth. If any of that tech dies, power goes out,
Mhm.
again, you're screwed.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's a love-hate relationship. It gives you more freedom, but with more complexity. God, it sounds like we're talking IT and networking.
Exactly.
But yeah, the more innovations around music or any field of technology creates more complexity, and there's a
Yep.
there's a trade-off between freedom and complexity. Now, knock on wood, this tech is quite innovative, and it would be my own fault if the battery died or something else happened because this stuff's built pretty solidly. So
Yeah.
I'm falling in love with. I'll say this: I am falling in love with that technical side of music, which is great pedals, understanding and accepting. Like when I hit, I got a T-Rex Soulmate for acoustic.
Oh, nice.
That is a beautiful pedal that just helps broaden and brighten my sound.
Yeah.
Now, listen, if I play a wrong note, it's not going to hide it.
Exactly.
It's probably going to make it more distinguishable that I play a wrong chord at a wrong note because it's so much broader and brighter.
Yep.
So, while I appreciate the way tech has been able to enhance the sound of how I'm playing, I still have to play the song correctly,
Exactly.
and I'm proud of that. And I worry, again, me being an old fart Scrooge who's studied music differently than how kids are studying it today, I do worry tech is going to take away the foundational music or musicianship that has been taught for hundreds of years, to develop some of the wonderful creative ways musicians can adapt easily to any genre.
Exactly. Yep. So that's a good answer. I like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The worst thing I have, and it kills me too, is one of the guitars in the back has active pickups, and if you know active pickups, they have a battery. But I'll plug it in and I'll forget that it's plugged in. So when I go pick it up later, the battery's dead. So now I can't play the guitar. I'm like, oh crap. It's just those little things. And it's funny because I don't know why I just didn't put two and two together because I was excited about talking to you. What actually started all this was, and I'll go ahead and say it, when we were doing that stadium, doing the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, the Mets.
And then it came up to John and I, John, we went and saw John Mayer.
Nice.
And I explained to him, I said, and it's when John Mayer was doing acoustic, right? So it's just him on stage. And I said, have you noticed, and you'll appreciate this as acoustic singer, he changed guitars almost every song. And it was explained to John, it's because every guitar has a different sound. He went from a dobro to a 12 string to a small neck to a large neck, which is going to have different in your tones. And then he went to and then I said, if you notice, there's no cables on the stage. Now, beside each stage is nothing but Christmas lights. The mixer's in the middle of the stage, but there's no cables because you can't have a trip hazard because then you got a lawsuit. And so then I said, that's where you're missing, where technology has really grew into music, right?
Yeah.
So like, when I was growing up and saw Fleetwood Mac or, Van Halen, there was cables everywhere, right? Wall of amps, right? So, but today it's all hidden. So all you see is the musician on stage with a guitar, but there's so much technology going on in the background. The Wi-Fi in the stadium, people taking videos on Facebook, chatting. If you think about your Bluetooth, let's say if it was Wi-Fi, and luckily there are Wi-Fi extenders you can buy for equipment, but if you didn't have one, you're dependent on the Wi-Fi in the club you're playing at. And I'm not John Mayer, never will be. So the clubs I'm playing at don't have Wi-Fi. But if
mine hardly have a bathroom that I'm playing in. I think you got to take a leak in the alley out back.
and hope that your monitor's turned. But if you think about it, if I have practiced in my bedroom for hours and I'm dependent on that battery and I get on stage because I forgot to unplug it, now I'm screwed. I'm like, oh crap.
Yep.
So,
and you know what? John Mayer is a wonderful example of having a foundation in music history and music theory and chord progression and all of that, because think how freeing it is as a musician like John Mayer is, who went to Berkeley, actually dropped out of Berkeley College of Music.
Yep.
But think how freeing it is that he rarely plays the same song the same way.
Exactly.
Because he understands how to mix chord progressions and he understands the emphasis of adding a seventh or a ninth and how it broadens the sound. Instead of being stuck in this little box of the four chords that the tab told you to play.
Exactly.
If I had one wish granted to me, it would be able to have the foundational musical ability that John Mayer has, to be able to move so easily as if he's breathing through the guitar, and make every single note his own. It's a God-given gift, but it comes with a lot of practice.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of dedication.
There was a joke. You appreciate this. Gosh, I don't remember what it was, but my daughter was really young, so it was in the early 90s. And there was a guy that they were trying to sue him because he had one of these ads that says, learn to play like the greats for $1. Well, this was on the news. So when people were sending him $1, and he'd send him one sheet of paper that says practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
And that was it. And you couldn't sue him because it's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So they said, is this real? You know, it's like, no, it's not. It's you practice.
So what is that? I mean, I completely agree with you, but think about the next generations of musicians and them coming up. They would look at us like we had three heads.
Yeah.
So I don't know how does that, I don't think it's any way to solve it, but you know, what is that? I mean, would he give the same answer 10, 20 years from now? I wonder because, you know, musicians like us are not going to be around forever, and new musicians are only going to know tech. Like our kids only know the internet,
Exactly.
you know, and they don't know before the internet, you know, they only know email and Insta and all the other crap.
Yeah. Well, it's funny.
So yeah, I wonder how that answer would look like. I'm sure music will still be as delightful and fulfilling as it is today and has been in the past, just developed and unfortunately even maybe manufactured differently.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
so I have two boys, right, that live at home. And one of them started music school early, or started at school, and he did it for about 4 or 5 years, and he started on trumpet. The other one I started on drums because I wanted to learn the basics of a beat, right? Because that's something most musicians screw up all the time. But the problem is when I set him down, I said, dude, you've got everything on the planet to learn, right? You've got guitars, we've got a real high-end snare drum right there. If you wanted to learn something, we would invest into it. The sad thing is he says, no, he just pulls up Logic Pro and just starts putting beats. And it's like, no, Dad, I'll just do it all here. I'm like, yeah, but you're missing this part.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So, but
It's funny you say that because my opera singer daughter first started in middle school on the violin, and yeah, and was good at it, but it just wasn't her dream instrument. And she didn't really know what to do. And I said, whatever you do or whatever you decide, it has, you know, if you want to move to a different genre of music, you have to learn an instrument.
yeah.
So if you want to move from violin, then pick another instrument. You know, luckily we found her voice as her instrument and dove way into the deep end of getting her up to speed on of using that voice as a career.
That is awesome.
But I was always like, you got to learn a music. You got to learn an instrument. I don't care what it is. Just learn an instrument. You know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, you had to learn some form of art, and you know, and pick an instrument and grow with it. And
yeah.
The oldest son, he was all about that. The younger one, he's like, yeah, I'll do it later.
Yeah.
But
And that's the way my youngest daughter was. More of intellectual mind, sciences, etc. But my oldest, yeah, is kind of following the path I took. So
there you go.
And I'll say this, you know, I have a few regrets in my life. One of those regrets is worrying how I was going to pay the bills being a full-time musician.
Yeah, that's why I went the other way.
So in college, when I was a music major and taking all those theory classes and still performing in jazz bands with guys that are like 40 years older than me, I got scared and I worried because all I wanted to do was perform. I didn't want to teach. I just wanted to perform. And I unfortunately, or fortunately, changed my major to another creative. I was involved in the arts and have drawn all my life and was very good at it. So I took that and went into business and marketing and advertising.
Nice.
So I was able to stay creative and just proceeded to be a part-time musician for the last 30 years.
Yeah, same here.
But I do regret worrying too much about how I was going to make ends meet. And I'm very proud of my kid because we all know teachers don't make enough money for the job that they do and the hard work it is to teach this next generation of kids. She's not worried about how she's going to make ends meet. It'll work out like it always works out. And she's doing what she loves all day, every day, which is to teach the next generation the fundamentals of music so it can bring
That is
them,
awesome.
lasting creativity and fulfillment. So,
Yeah, that is great. Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's super awesome. Yeah, growing up in the 80s, I saw too many guys struggling and painting on the side and playing guitar on the weekends. I'm like, yeah, I don't want
Yeah.
to be that guy.
Yeah. 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 It's unfortunate. I've said this all my life, and I'm sure every creative person says it. It's unfortunate that the creative arts does not pay like tech does,
Exactly.
which is why we're in tech and we're doing creativity part-time.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
well, cool, man. All right. So I'm not going to keep you forever because
Uh-huh.
one thing about videos, nobody wants to watch a 2 hour video anyway.
Yeah.
But so if there was something you could change today, or if it's the kids, the
Hmm.
learning, the technology, if you had full control to change anything, what would it be?
I'm so glad you asked that because I was thinking about making sure I put this little short little paragraph into our conversation. I
Please.
recently learned just in the last year, doing more mental health work and being more conscious and mindful of everything in my life now that the kids are gone. Um, I hope this touches a lot of musicians out there, but I spent 30 years being on stage and letting the audience dictate how I was going to feel.
Yes.
So for anyone who's played in dingy bars, they're either going to listen to you and be into it or they're not. And unfortunately, like many musicians who, and comedians or anyone in the arts that is pulled to a certain field in order to get acceptance and worth and acknowledgement and love by performing and waiting for the audience to say whether that performance was good or not. I spent way too many years letting the audience, if they weren't into it because there was a football game on or God knows whatever, if they weren't into it, I felt horrible. I went home. I could have played every single song and 3 sets acoustic, you play a good 45, 50 songs.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like 3 times the amount a John Mayer would play for an hour and a half,
Yeah, exactly.
gig or something.
Yeah.
You bust your ass. But unfortunately, if they weren't into it for any reason, it affected me profoundly.
Yeah.
If they were into it, and I had chicks up dancing on tables and buying drinks for people and really owned that bar, I would go home feeling the best I could have ever felt. But if for
Right.
any reason, if they weren't into it, it devastated me. And what I've learned over the last year, which is something I wish I had learned 30 years ago, is to play music for me and me only.
That's a good point.
So I don't care anymore what the audience thinks. And I say that with the most, beautiful intentions.
Yes. Yes.
I care what I think about how I'm playing. And it's changed the way I play music and it's changed the way I view gigs. I have the best time on stage now, as if I was alone in my room
Yeah.
learning a song and just dancing to it while I'm learning it and having a great time and feeling the music. Not waiting to feel the acknowledgement of the audience, but feeling the music and being super into it and being super mindful of what's happening and being super focused on every single song and how I'm performing it versus how the audience is taking it.
That's
So
perfect. Yeah.
I do wish that kind of introspection on any creative person out there.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, who cares what anyone thinks about your creativity and where it takes you? An artist, a musician, when you're doing it for yourself, then you remove all the suffering and all the pain that comes with trying to find love and worth and acknowledgement in the creative arts.
It's perfect, man. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So it falls in line. I read one time, I think it was Steve Vai or somebody was saying, don't be the guy that wants to be in a band, be the guy the band wants. So it's
Mm.
so it's kind of like do your thing, be
Yeah.
you, and just
Yeah.
enjoy what you're
Play
doing.
play music for yourself, draw
Exactly.
for yourself, paint for yourself, sing for yourself. If
Exactly.
you do that, the effect on the audience is inevitable
Yeah, for
because they're
sure.
going to be like, "Oh my God, look how much fun that person's having," or "Look how into this song he is,"
Yeah.
or "Look at the passion put into this painting," or the passion behind her voice, whatever. It's addictive.
Oh, it's great. So one of the funniest stories, and not to digress, but it falls
Hmm.
right in this paragraph, was I had the honor to see Corey Taylor live once. And if you don't know, Corey Taylor's lead singer of Slipknot. Most people
Hmm.
don't know that because he wears the mask.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster, right? So it's Corey Taylor without his band. And he was in
Hmm.
Stone Sour too, which is one of my favorite bands. But the truth is, it was one of the best shows I've ever seen because it was just him at Hard Rock. He was screwing up. He was laughing. He would do
Yeah.
cover tunes, be like, "Oh, screwed that up," but it was just so funny
Uh-huh.
because he was engaged with the audience, having
Yes.
fun, and and he'd do story time, and it's like, dude, that was one of the best shows I've ever seen. But it was
So
kind of like,
it's, yeah. And I just saw recently, I actually missed, I bought tickets for this show at the 9:30 Club in DC, and I missed the show on Friday night because I was out of town. But there's an up and coming group called Sammy Ray and the Friends. And she's a classically trained musician. They're out of the Northeast Boston, Connecticut area. And when I saw her a year or two ago at the 9:30 Club in DC, a great club to see music at, I brought a couple friends of mine that had no idea who she was. They just wanted to tag along. They were looking to get out. And we all left feeling better. And I swear to God, this group made the most loving, inclusive, accepting 2 hour, room and event where you felt so much better about the world and yourself. And it was one of the most beautiful gigs I have ever seen. And
nice,
it was half about the music and the other half about creating a space
yeah,
that this group did for the audience to just be, and you can finish that sentence however you want.
right,
And when you stop playing for the audience and you play for yourself, that is an environment that you create
right.
because your love for music and how you hear and feel every note of a song is addictive to the rest of the audience. It just is.
That is
So to
awesome.
be able to be a musician and play or be creative and do whatever you're doing and have that effect on the people around you without even trying, that is what,
What
being
music can
creative
do.
is all about. It
Yeah,
really is.
I tell people all the time, the music is a filling. It's not, it shouldn't be work.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
work, but it's that feeling that comes out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that enjoyment. So I love it. All right. So I guess I'll let you go in a few seconds. Is there anything else you want to add or
No, Tim, I just want to thank you for having me on today. Would
thanks,
love
man?
to be a
Thanks.
repeat customer. I can talk music
Oh, heck yeah.
all day, all night, and the benefits of it and the power of it. Yeah, this was a good time, so I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
we'll definitely do it again. So
Good.
I enjoy it. So like I said, it's just don't want it too long, but it's
Uh-huh.
man, I'm the same way. I can talk music all day long. In fact, my
Yeah.
wife hates it. She's like, "You need friends."
That's right.
It's like, yeah, I do need friends, don't
There you
I?
go.
So too funny. Anyway, if you're ever in Nashville, you got to come by. It's funny. I'm actually sporting a shirt. This is a local mom and pops. It's a local little. They're they're super nice friends that actually
Uh-huh.
own a little. It's I want to call it a guitar shop, but it's almost anything. But
Hmm.
they can deal with any kind of guitar you find, from
Nice.
classic 1950 Gibson acoustics to
Yep.
it's more of a I call it a dream wish store because I
Yeah.
can't afford them, but
Hmm.
they have the best Les Pauls. But point is, if you come around Nashville, you got to let me know. It's
Yeah, definitely. I
music
definitely
is
will.
everywhere. So it's
Cool.
great. All right,
Excellent. Thanks,
cool,
Tim.
man. So I'll stop the recording and then we can say goodbye. And
Yeah.
so thanks, man.